Welcome to ICT Integration Workshop 2. This is all about collaboration, cooperation and sharing. Hopefully you've done well with Workshop 1 and your LAMB sequence. So what I'm going to be covering in this topic is some examples of collaborative learning, how to make a podcast, and then we're going to go into teaching for the future. So collaboration is basically when you're getting together to work, and in cooperative learning, the instructor is the center of authority in the class. So that's very old school, but basically it means that the teacher is guiding everything, which is good, it's what you want. In contrast, with collaborative learning, the instructor is the person who's in charge, and the teacher is empowering the students to do the work. So the teacher is more of the learning facilitator. So my thoughts on this is the collaborate is when we're working together to complete a task. Cooperate is when we split up the work. Everyone goes off and does their own thing and it comes back together, for example in jigsawing. And sharing is where we just share each other's work. So we each have specific tasks and we just share our work at the end. Some examples of this would be problem-based learning, case studies, working in learning communities, lab work. So there's lots of stuff that's already been done in the past, and there's new methods of technology and teaching that we're getting into the future. Okay, so teaching tour. In this case, I've got 25 students in my class. They're each broken up into 5 groups, and each group would have their own tasks that they need to complete. For example, if I was teaching science, it might be oxygen cycle, nitrogen cycle, water cycle, food groups, and waste disposal or something. So this group 1, will have to research the information they'll be given. So in this case, they're working in the oxygen cycle. They will then have to prepare a little talk, which goes for 3 minutes. And then the first thing they'll have to do is, this person here, who's the leader, will have to then practice by giving their talk to the first group. They will then have to teach everyone else. So the way we do this is, once they've practiced and prepared, they then move around. So they then move around. So this group will go to here, this group will go to here, and so on. So I'll just skip on. Right, so they've all moved round 1. And you can see here that the rough amount of time I'd spend on it. So the leader 1 now has to present to group 5 their topic. So group 5 are now going to learn about the oxygen cycle. And then they'd all move around again. So group 1's talking to group 4, and then group 3, group 2, group 1. Right. Meanwhile, group 1 has gone to each group, so they've learned about all the other things. When they get back here, they have to teach, the group has to teach the leader all the information they've covered. Now, the good thing about doing it this way is, number 1, if you've got some students that are struggling, you can make them the leader. So then, because they're having to reteach stuff, they'll learn that one bit of information very well. However, they might not learn all the other ones very well. If you want, you might have someone who's shy, you can force them into this position, or you may let the students choose. As a teacher, what am I doing? I'm not doing any work at all. However, what I'm doing is I'm managing the class. I'm not having to worry about the content. Instead, I'm managing, and I'll come past group 1 and say, well, have you spoken? If you've covered the oxygen cycle, have you spoken about some of the different aspects of the oxygen cycle? And when I go to the next group, I'm up again asking if they're doing their different stuff. Right? So I'm using my time to manage the class because I've set up the class effectively beforehand. So this is a teaching tool. This is an example of my students. So this is the group when they're preparing. In this case, this is the student that's going to be presenting. All the other ones are researching together. Some are using textbooks, some are using iPads, some are just writing notes. And then this is the same student who's presenting to other groups that come through. So you can see she recorded her stuff on paper, but you've got some students who are then writing notes on paper, others are using their technology. So low tech, you could just do this whole thing on paper. Very low tech, medium tech, you might have one computer in the group which you can put the presentation on, or you might even put the presentation on the wall. Higher tech is they all have computers, so they can all be researching together, collaborating and sharing, and you could also push this off as a podcast. Okay, Gelatissimo. So this is a different one. In this case, what you're doing is you're getting the students to produce a podcast. They're going to need a good rubric to do this, and they're going to have to do some research. However, now when I say Gelatissimo, I actually mean we go to the gelati place. So I take my students down to the gelati place, and they have to do some research there. So when we get there, I give them each a different topic. So a bit like the teaching tour, but this case I might give them a topic on cold fusion, hypothermia, absolute zero. So you can see it's all related to cold. So it's not actually related to Gelatissimo, it's related to cold. Because again, this is coming from science. Now, how the student's going to research when they get there, they could use their phones, they could use the paper that I've given, whatever, and they have to produce the technology. Now, this is my students sitting in the class, in Gelatissimo, and they're all getting together in their stuff. The other thing we do is we buy ice cream. Now, to give you some kind of idea of the task, this is the one I've done for Teach SA. So it's a podcast activity. The yellow is the only thing that you have to change. Now, I'm happy to share this file with you. So this is the rubric of what they have to do. So a research, so the researching has to be a high standard. Presenting, you want to present as either a vodcast or a podcast or a keynote or whatever they want. Content, make sure it's all on topic and clarity. I also put in normally another extra section, which is the group work. Are they working together as a group? Are they not distracting others? And I normally I change this depending on the topic. So in this case I was working with teachers, so interacting with the presenters. Up here you can say whether you work in groups of 2 or 3 or on their own, and I'm outlining what they need to do. So if we were going to, in this case, it's how to integrate technology in the classroom, like what you guys are doing. If we're going to Gelatissimo, it might be cold fusion, or research your cold topic. If we were going to the Adelaide Town Hall, it might be look at the heritage of Adelaide Town Hall. In here, I put in the points that they have to cover. So this is how you specify and make sure they're on task. I normally also say you have to include 2 quotes. Now, normally when you go on excursion, you're given a worksheet. It gives the kids something to do while they're there, and they work through the worksheet, and it's boring. However, what you can do is you can get them to do this podcast activity, and you say this podcast activity has to be finished before you leave the event, and it has to be marked. So if they're working in groups of 3, and you might have 30 in your class, that means they're only allowed to go for 2 minutes, plus or minus 10 seconds. Otherwise, they start losing marks. Now, you can imagine when the group's walking around and they have to get a couple of quotes, they are sitting there enthralled with what the person's saying because they're listening for their quotes that they want. It freaks out the presenters a little bit sometimes, but it gives the impression that the students are interested in what's going on. They may not actually be interested, but it gives the impression. That's important. You'll notice that I'm not giving marks for the podcast itself. I'm giving it for the content and the way they present. Some students will just pick up their phone and record it straight on the phone. Some will film it from their phone. Some may have some other form of technology. If you want, they might just, if you're using low tech, they might write down the notes and come and present to you. Now, when they bring it to me, I then just grab a pen or a highlighter and say, yep, research, fine, tick. Presentation, fine. No, well, it went for too long, so lost a couple of marks there. Content, well, you got off topic sometimes and you missed some points. Clarity, spoke very well, excellent, and they work well as a group, so let's say a 4. So that I've instantly marked it. So I've listened for 2 minutes and I've marked it. There's 3 students ticked off. I normally can get all the work, all their stuff done, all their podcasts completed before we leave, and then I can get it marked before even on the way back to school. If I'm on a bus or if I'm on a train or if we're just walking back, I can mark it as we walk back. Okay, so making a podcast. So if a podcast actually means product on demand. So it's the content and information on when you need it. In this case, there's lots of different programs you could use. On a Mac, you can use Audacity, and I'll give you a demonstration of that. Or ScreenFlow is the one that I use. It's $100, but it's definitely worth it. PC, some of these are old now, but Cam Studio and Audacity again. iPad is explain everything. It's the best one to use. It's one app of the year. It's one app of the year. It's a great app. It only costs $3, and I'll give you a demo of that. Or you can do it online, direct to YouTube. So this is Audacity. So very simple, all I do is hit record, and as I'm talking you can see the marks coming up, you can see my recording is here. If I stop this and hit here, click on here. Now you probably cannot hear that because I'm using my sound recording for somewhere else, but the information is there. I could click this and edit it if I wish to. Oops. Trim it, edit, cut it out, and then when I want I can export it as a file. This is ScreenFlow, which is what I use, so it's a little bit more technical now, and it's actually bringing in the sound and the video. So I can detach the audio from this. So you can see here, this is my video, this is my sound, so I can see all the sound in here. Well, if I play this, I don't want that bit, so I can come up here. Now the hard part is I'm actually recording a second ScreenFlow at the same time. Highlight this, I can trim that, and I can go, I don't want that bit. Let's polish that up and start from there. Now, when you're making a podcast, things you want to do is research a subject first. So prepare all that, get your program, get your podcast, record it, and then put it into your computer. Okay, so Ramona Pearson is someone who I've seen present and has been following her work that she's been doing. She's over in America, and she actually talks about the way that students learn. Some students learn really well on their own, so computer facilitated instructions. Others learn best in group work or virtual instruction, or they learn best with teachers helping them out. So instead of going this single model of learning where the teacher stands out the front and everyone teaches, we have to realize that students can be broken into groups and do their own thing. The teacher then has the ability to walk around and assess how they're going and decide on what is the best method. Now that's how teachers do now, although normally we have one task going on at one time. Teachers work around. Students can move from different groups, which is great, and it means that so sometimes they may be better at virtual instruction and sometimes they're better at cooperative learning. The computer over in America, they have an artificial intelligence engine which determines what's going to be best for the students. So sometimes students will learn really well working on their own in a class environment. Others need the computer to give them the video content. Others need to have a teacher's instruction or virtual instruction, and others learn best working in the group. Now the computer decides, okay, little Jared works really well for his English working with a group. However, he's fine to do his maths working on the computer. So when I rock up to school on Monday, it will say, okay, everyone in the group is prepared, is ready, you can come and learn with that group. So it assigns all those students to the same class. But after recess, some of these other students are off doing stuff, and it says none of your partners are free, so we'll get you doing some of your maths work. That means every single day of the year you're coming to school and then being given the chance to learn in the methods that's best for you. Now the artificial intelligence engine in the computer at the school will determine what learning works best, and it will assess you as you're learning. So if this is not working for me for one subject, it will say, well, let's try something else for you. And so the computer is learning how you learn. Outstanding way of teaching, but it's not doing anything different to what teachers have been doing for years. We understand how students learn and we can track their progress. The discussion board this week is I want you to discuss how you would get a class to work collaboratively without using technology. It may be working in partners, it may be doing something, but give an example. The second part I want you to do is how would you get a class to work together using technology, right? So you can use an example that we've used before or one of your own. And there's an extra section that I'll get you to say later on of how these podcasts can be improved for next semester or next year. The next thing we're going to be, I'll make a podcast to explain Standard 4, which is what we're going to be focusing on this week.